She left the pack at dusk. The other lionesses had gathered near a waterhole, their bellies full from a kill made the night before. But this mother was already carrying something heavier than hunger. Her cubs were coming, and the pride could not know. Not yet. She moved through the tall grass at the edge of the floodplain, her paws pressing softly into the dry earth. Behind her, the pride's scent faded. Ahead, the desert opened like a wound. The Kalahari stretches across 900,000 square kilometers of sand and thorn. There is no mercy in its open spaces, no forgiveness in its heat. A lioness who leaves the protection of the pride is stepping into a world where every shadow holds a threat, and every step costs water she does not have. But she had no choice. In the pride, cubs are born into a complicated hierarchy. Other lionesses may accept a new litter, or they may not. Males passing through will kill cubs that are not their own to bring the mother back into heat. The safest place for a newborn is the most dangerous place for an adult. Alone, hidden, invisible. So she found her den. It was not a cave. There are no caves in this part of the desert. It was a thicket of acacia thorn and dry brush, tucked into a shallow depression where the ground held just enough moisture for a few stunted trees. The branches formed a roof, the thorns formed a wall, and in the center, on the bare sand, she gave birth. 3 cubs, blind, helpless, weighing less than a kilogram each. For the first 48 hours she did not leave them. She lay curled around their small bodies, her tongue cleaning the thin fur, her warmth the only thing between them and the night cold. The temperatures dropped to near freezing after sunset, a brutal swing that the cubs could not survive without her. But the heat was coming. The Kalahari in December is a furnace. Ground temperatures can exceed 60 degrees Celsius by midday. Air temperatures climb past 43, sometimes higher. For a lioness who has not eaten in 4 days, who is producing milk from a body already running on reserves, the calculus is simple and terrible. She must hunt, or her cubs will starve. But if she hunts too far from the den, the heat will kill them before she returns. This is the geometry of maternal survival in the desert. Every choice is a measurement of distance, time, and temperature. That word, measurement, is the only honest way to see what she faces. If this kind of raw desert arithmetic speaks to you, subscribe to follow more stories where love is calculated in kilometers and degrees. Tell us in the comments, what did the word measurement reveal to you about maternal instinct? Field researchers from the University of Pretoria tracked a single desert lioness over 3 weeks in the Kalahari Transfrontier Park. They recorded her movements, her kills, her time away from the den. The data told a story that no narration could soften. She walked an average of 18 kilometers per night, hunting in the dark when the heat retreated, then returned to the den before sunrise. Each morning, she lay in the shade of the thicket while her cubs nursed, her body temperature already elevated from the night's exertion. By midday, even in the shade, the air around her reached 40 degrees. Her cubs were born in the hottest time of year. The mother cannot sweat. Her primary cooling mechanisms are panting, seeking shade, and staying still. But staying still means not hunting. Not hunting means no milk. And no milk means the cubs die within days. There is a word in Setswana used by the San Bushmen who have watched these lions for centuries. Mokwa. It means the way things must be done, the pattern that survival follows. The mother does not choose to suffer. She simply follows the pattern. By the 3rd day, she was hungry enough to stalk again. She left the cubs hidden beneath the acacia, their tiny bodies pressed together in a hollow she had scraped into the sand. They would be safe for a few hours, as long as no predator passed nearby, as long as the sun did not find them, as long as her scent did not draw anything with teeth. She moved downwind, her belly low to the ground, her eyes scanning the horizon for movement. The heat shimmer rose from the sand in waves, distorting the distance. A herd of springbok grazed at the edge of a dry riverbed, but they were too far, too alert. She needed something closer, something wounded, or young, or careless. She found a warthog sow with a single piglet. The piglet was small, perhaps 3 weeks old. It stayed close to its mother's flank, its tail twitching as it rooted in the dry earth for bulbs. The sow was alert, her tusks visible, her ears rotating to catch every sound. A lioness would not normally take on a warthog sow. The tusks can rip open a belly, sever tendons, leave a hunter bleeding in the sand. But this lioness was not hunting for herself. She circled wide, using a low dune as cover. The wind was steady from the east, carrying her scent away from the warthogs. She dropped into a crouch at the edge of the dune, her muscles coiling, her tail flicking once. Then she launched. The sow saw her at the last second. She wheeled, squealing, and charged. The piglet froze. In that moment of chaos, the lioness changed direction, swerving past the sow's tusks and clamping her jaws around the piglet's neck. It was over in 3 seconds. She carried the carcass back toward the den, her pace quick. The sun was climbing. The sand was already hot. She had 2 kilometers to cover, and the temperature was rising by the minute. When she reached the thicket, the cubs were alive. They had not moved from the hollow. Their tiny flanks rose and fell with shallow breaths. She dropped the carcass at the entrance, then lay down and let them nurse. This is what the desert demands, that a mother become both provider and weapon, hunter and shelter, all at once. And it is never enough for long. By the 5th day, the piglet was gone. The cubs needed more. The mother's milk production was dropping, her body fat depleted. She would need to kill again, and soon. But the springbok had moved deeper into the desert, following a rainfall that fell 100 kilometers north. The warthogs had grown wary. The landscape was emptying. She began to range farther each night. The researchers tracked her traveling up to 27 kilometers in a single night, returning at dawn with nothing but exhaustion. She would lie in the shade for hours, panting, her tongue hanging, her eyes fixed on nothing. Then the wind shifted. It came from the northeast, hot and dry, carrying the smell of dust and distance. A sandstorm was building near the horizon, a brown veil rising into the sky. The mother lifted her head, nostrils flaring. She had seen storms like this before. They could bury the den, block the entrance, trap the cubs under a meter of sand. She moved quickly. She led the cubs out of the thicket, nudging them forward with her muzzle. They were still unsteady, their eyes only recently open. They stumbled over roots and rocks, mewling their distress. The mother urged them on, her pace urgent but not panicked. She knew a place, a crevice in a rocky outcrop 2 kilometers to the south. It would be sheltered, high enough to avoid the worst of the sand. But the storm was faster. The wind picked up, lashing her face with grit. The cubs could barely see. She had to stop, crouch over them, let them press against her belly for protection. The sand stung her skin. The air thickened. This is the moment when the desert tests the mother's knowledge. The sand trackers say that a lioness knows the land not by sight, but by feel. She remembers the slope of a dune, the texture of a rock, the direction of a dry riverbed. Even blind, she can find her way. She waited for a lull in the wind, then moved again. The crevice was where she remembered it, a narrow gash in the limestone, just wide enough for her body. She pushed the cubs inside, then backed in after them. The sand howled past the entrance, piling up in drifts. But inside, the air was still. The cubs huddled against her, trembling. She would wait here until the storm passed. Hours, maybe days. She had no water, no food. The cubs would nurse from a body that had nothing left to give. And when the storm cleared, she would have to hunt again, in a landscape rearranged by wind. But the sandstorm was only the beginning. Out on the salt pans, where the heat bakes the ground to the hardness of bone, something had changed. A clan of hyenas had been displaced by wildfire in the north. They were moving south into the lioness's territory. 11 of them, full-grown, hungry. The mother did not know this yet. She lay in the crevice, her cubs sleeping against her flank, her ears catching fragments of sound through the storm. A hyena's whoop is unmistakable. It carries for kilometers across open ground. She had heard it before, always from a distance. But this time, it seemed closer. She tensed. The hyena called again, closer still. The mother rose to her feet in the crevice, her hackles raised. The cubs stirred, confused. She lowered her head, blocking them with her body. The darkness outside the entrance was complete, filled with swirling sand and the high-pitched giggling of hyenas on the move. She had survived the heat. She had survived the hunger. She had survived the storm. But now she faced something worse than the desert itself: competition. In the Kalahari, the line between hunter and hunted is thin. A single lioness cannot fight 11 hyenas. They would swarm her, tear her apart, then eat her cubs alive. Her only advantage was the crevice. A narrow entrance means only one hyena can come at a time. If she had to, she could hold the line. But hyenas are patient. They know the geometry of siege better than any animal in the desert. They would wait for thirst to drive her out. They would wait for the heat to weaken her. They would wait until her cubs cried loud enough to give away her position. The mother had no plan. She had only the pattern: survive the night, fight the next fight, keep the cubs alive 1 hour at a time. The sandstorm began to thin toward dawn. The wind dropped. The sky turned a pale orange. The hyenas had not moved. They were gathered at the base of the outcrop, their eyes fixed on the crevice, their tongues hanging. The mother looked out at them, then back at her cubs. She had a choice to make, and either path would cost her something permanent. If she stayed in the crevice, the hyenas would wait her out. Within 2 days, dehydration would set in. The cubs would weaken. The heat inside the rock would climb as the sun rose. She would have to make a run for water, leaving the cubs exposed or die of thirst with them. If she charged the hyenas, she might scatter a few. But 11 against 1 is not a fight. It is an execution. Her death would leave the cubs alone, and the hyenas would take them within minutes. There was a third path, one that only a mother who knows the desert can see. That third path is not guesswork. It is knowledge pressed into bone over generations. If stories of survival that depend on inherited wisdom move you, subscribe to keep uncovering the pattern, the Sankol Mokwa. And in the comments, write the word Mokwa if you believe instinct is just memory you have not yet named. The lioness turned and began to dig, not outward, toward the hyenas. She dug downward, into the floor of the crevice, where the limestone had fractured and crumbled over centuries. The sand bushmen know these rocks. They know that the Kalahari limestone sits on top of ancient water channels, carved by rivers that dried up 10,000 years ago. Sometimes below the surface, the cracks lead to underground chambers, deep enough that the hyenas cannot follow. The mother dug with her claws, her shoulders straining. The cubs watched, silent. The hyenas outside growled and snapped, but they did not enter. Not yet. They could not see what she was doing. She broke through the limestone after 40 minutes of digging. A dark opening appeared below, narrow and steep. She pushed a cub into it, then another, then the third. She followed, lowering herself into the darkness. The underground chamber was cool. The walls were damp. Water seeped through a crack in the bedrock, gathering in a small pool at the bottom. The mother lapped at it, then let her cubs drink. Above her, she heard the hyenas enter the crevice. Their claws scraped on the stone. Their voices echoed, but they could not find the hole. She had covered it with loose rock from inside the chamber. The entrance was invisible. She lay down in the dark, her cubs safe for now, and waited. But the desert was not done with her. The underground chamber had no exit, no other tunnel. She had found water, yes, but no way out. The hole she had dug was too steep for the cubs to climb back up, and the hyenas might still be waiting above. She was trapped, and the heat was rising again outside, 50 degrees Celsius, pressing down on the stone, heating the chamber slowly from above. The mother closed her eyes. In the desert, there is no rescue. There is only the next decision, and the strength to make it. She woke to absolute silence. The chamber had grown darker. The crack overhead, where she had entered, now showed only a faint sliver of gray light. The hyenas had gone, or they had settled into a patient watch. She could not tell which. Her cubs pressed against her, their small bodies warm but growing weaker. They had not nursed in hours. Her milk was nearly gone. The pool of water at the bottom of the chamber was shallow, no deeper than her paw. She had drunk from it, and her cubs had lapped at it. But it was not enough to sustain them. Water alone cannot feed a growing cub. They need protein. They need fat. They need the milk that only a well-fed mother can produce. She had to find a way out. She explored the chamber with her nose, her whiskers brushing the damp walls. The limestone was rough, pitted with tiny fossils from a time when this desert was an ocean floor. She traced the perimeter, searching for any weakness, any crack that might lead upward. At the far end, where the water pooled, she found something. The wall here was different. The limestone was not solid. It was a jumble of fallen rocks, stacked as if by some ancient collapse. She pressed her shoulder against the largest stone. It shifted slightly. A sliver of light appeared at the edge. She pushed harder. The stone rolled aside, scraping against the others. A narrow passage opened beyond, barely wide enough for her body. The air that came through was hot and dry, heavy with the smell of dust and sun-baked earth. She did not know where it led, but it was not the crevice. It was not the hyenas. It was a chance. She led the cubs through the passage one by one. The walls scraped her ribs. The floor sloped upward, then leveled out. After 10 meters, the passage opened into another chamber, larger than the first. Sunlight streamed through a crack in the ceiling, high above, too high to reach. But the floor was covered in dry guano, the droppings of bats that had used this place for generations. Bats mean insects. Insects mean life. And where there is life, there is usually a way in and a way out. The mother searched the chamber ceiling, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. The crack was too narrow for her body. But she noticed something else. The guano was not evenly distributed. It formed a small mound directly beneath the crack, and a thin trail led from the mound toward the far wall. She followed the trail. At the wall, she found a second passage, this one even narrower, angling upward. It smelled of open air. She pressed her muzzle into it and inhaled deeply. The scent was faint, but unmistakable. Dry grass, hot sand, and the distant metallic tang of blood. Something had died out there. Recently, she pushed the cubs into the passage ahead of her and began to climb. The passage twisted and turned, following the natural fractures in the limestone. The mother used her claws to grip the rough stone, pulling herself upward. The cubs scrambled behind her, their tiny claws scratching against the rock. Progress was slow. The heat grew more intense as they neared the surface. After 20 minutes of climbing, the passage opened into a shallow depression, half covered by a tangle of dry brush. The mother pushed through the brush and emerged into the desert. The sun was directly overhead. The heat hit her like a wall. She blinked, letting her eyes adjust. The landscape around her was the same as before, endless dunes and scattered thorn trees, but the sandstorm had rearranged everything. The thicket where her den had been was gone, buried under a meter of fine brown sand. The rocky outcrop was still visible in the distance, but the crevice was now half filled with drift, and the hyenas were gone. She scanned the horizon, her ears swiveling. Nothing. No movement. No sound. The clan had moved on, following some scent trail or heading toward a water source she could not smell. For now, she was alone. But she could not stay here. The cubs were too exposed. The ground was too hot. She needed shade, and she needed food, and she needed it before the sun drove her into the ground. She lifted her head, tasting the air. The metallic scent was still there, stronger now. It came from the east, beyond a low dune. She moved toward it, her cubs stumbling behind her, their small paws burning on the sand. She crested the dune and saw it. A gemsbok bull lay in the dry riverbed below, its body still, its eyes open and glazed. It had died recently, perhaps that morning, perhaps the night before. There were no scavengers yet, no vultures circling. The heat had kept them away, or the storm had driven them off. The mother descended the dune, her pace quickening. She reached the carcass and circled it, checking for any sign of disease or poison. The bull was thin, its ribs visible. It had died of dehydration probably, weakened by the drought that had pushed the springbok north. She tore into the carcass, her jaws working quickly. She ate until her stomach distended, then ate more. The cubs joined her, their small teeth gnawing at the softer parts, their hunger driving them forward. For the first time in a week, they were full. The mother lay down in the shade of the riverbank, her cubs beside her, and rested. The heat pressed down, but the carcass provided enough shelter. She would guard it through the afternoon, driving away any scavengers that came near. The gemsbok would feed her for 3 or 4 days, maybe longer if she cached the remains. But the desert had not forgotten her. Out on the eastern horizon, a new cloud of dust was rising. Not a sandstorm this time. Something different. Something moving. The dust trail was narrow, concentrated. The kind made by a single animal moving fast. A cheetah, or a wild dog, or a lone hyena that had split from the clan. The mother watched it, her eyes narrowed. The dust trail was headed straight for the riverbed, straight for her meal. She rose to her feet, her body blocking the cubs. The dust came closer, resolved into a shape. It was a jackal, a large male, his coat matted, his ribs showing through his fur. He was thin, desperate, driven by the same hunger that had pushed her into the limestone. He stopped at the edge of the riverbed, his ears forward, his eyes fixed on the carcass. He saw the lioness. He saw the cubs. He calculated. A jackal cannot fight a lioness, but a jackal does not need to fight. He only needs to wait. He sat down in the shade of a thorn tree, his tongue hanging, and watched. The mother understood. He would follow her. He would watch her sleep. He would wait for her to move, and then he would slip in and steal what he could. If she left the carcass to hunt again, he would take everything. She could chase him away, but he would return. Jackals are relentless. They have learned to read the exhaustion in a predator's movements, to sense when the odds shift in their favor. The mother looked at her cubs. They were asleep now, their bellies round, their breathing steady. She looked at the gemsbok carcass, still heavy with meat. She looked at the jackal, sitting motionless in the shade. She had a choice to make. She could stay and guard the kill, wasting energy on a standoff that could last days. She could abandon the carcass and find a new hunting ground. But there was no guarantee of another kill. She could try to kill the jackal, but he was fast, and a fight would risk injury. In the end, she did something that surprised even herself. She dragged the carcass toward the thorn tree where the jackal sat. The jackal tensed, ready to flee, but the mother did not attack. She dropped the carcass 10 meters from the tree, then stepped back. Jackals are scavengers, not hunters. They survive by reading the leftovers of animals stronger than them. If there was enough for both of them, the mother reasoned, the jackal would not need to stalk her cubs. He approached the carcass cautiously, his tail low. He tore off a strip of meat and retreated to the tree, watching her. The mother did not move. She lay down beside her cubs and closed her eyes. In the desert, alliances are made not out of trust, but out of calculation. A fed jackal is a less dangerous jackal. A shared kill is a guarded kill. And a lioness who understands the cost of every fight knows when to lay down her weapons. She laid down her weapons not out of weakness, but out of calculation. If you want to see what that calculation costs her next, subscribe so you do not lose the thread when the desert moves again. And before you go, comment with one word: alliance, if you think her gamble will pay off, or calculation, if you think the jackal will betray her. The sun sank lower. The heat began to fade. The cubs woke and nursed, their small bodies warm against hers. For tonight, they would survive. But the drought was deepening. The springbok were not coming back. The waterholes were shrinking to puddles of mud. And somewhere to the north, a clan of hyenas was still moving south, their hunger growing with every kilometer. The mother had won the day, but the desert was already calculating the next move.